this video, I'm going to talk about music theory basics for guitar players. Music is made up of harmony, melody, and rhythm. But in this video, I'm just going to work on harmony and melody. I'll probably do another video about rhythm. But for now, I'm just going to focus on the basics of harmony and melody, just some basic concepts for guitar players, nothing real heavy. And the great thing is you can always, rewind the video, or if you're not sure something I said, you can always post a comment or something. Just to get started, the musical alphabet runs A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And those notes are on the guitar and you can find them. I'll show you where they are. But basically, the concept is that there's a whole step between every letter with the exception of B to C and E to F. So from A to B is a whole step. It's a little harder to see that just because of the open string. It's a little easier to see. So when I talk about a whole step, that's a basic concept. And what it is on the guitar is 2 frets apart. So if you're at A and you go up to B, that's a whole step. And a half step is 1 fret. But a whole step is made up of 2 half steps. So these are just some basic elements of music, but not something that you always hear about in the guitar world. So the formula for creating a major scale, which many melodies are based on, is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And if you look at a piano keyboard, you can see that there are black keys between the white keys. So there's a black key between C and D, there's a black key between D and E, but there's no black key between E and F, and that's where there's a half step. And then there's a whole step between F and G, between G and A, between A and B, but then a half step between B and C. So when you look at the piano keyboard, you can see that a little clearer. On the guitar, if you look at it maybe just straight up on one string, it might be a little easier to see. So like say if we start on a C note on the 5th string at the 3rd fret and go up a whole step to a D, instead of playing the D open on the 4th string, and this is a duplicate note here. This note is the same as the open string. And then if you go up another whole step, you're at E. So far I went whole step, and then half step. I'm creating a major scale here. So half step takes me to an F note, then whole step, half step. So usually you would play the C scale like this. But just to show the whole steps and half steps, I'm just going up on the 5th string. Whole step from C to D, whole step from D to E, half step from E to F, whole step from F to G, whole step from G to A, half step, whole step from A to B, A to B, and then half step from B to C. But you would never play it like that in any practical purpose. So what you would play is So the reason I'm talking about this is to just get some basic concepts and also to see how chords are put together. So what I just played there was a major scale. And also the notes are numbered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the starting note for a scale is the root, called the root note or the tonic note. And then the ending note is the octave. So that's a term that you need to be aware of, because a lot of times there'll be reference to that in music somewhere or something you're working on. But also, if you can think about the numbers of the scale tones, that helps you understand how chords are put together. Because a major scale is made from the root or the first note, major chord rather, and the third note, which in the key of C would be an E, and the fifth note of the scale, which would be a G, and then the octave, which is a C. So when you buy a guitar book, it usually shows you chord shapes. It just shows you, here's where you put your fingers to make the chords. But guitar method books usually don't get into what is making that chord. So a C chord is made up of the notes C, E, and G. Sometimes they'll write it out just in standard music notation. They'll write the letters, the notes on the staff, but it doesn't really illustrate that this is the root, the third, and the fifth of the scale, and then also the octaves there too. So once you understand what a chord is made of, then you can create chords anywhere on the neck if you know the notes. So this is a C chord, 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 this is a C chord. So anywhere you can find start to, create your own chord inversions. And that's another musical term. I'm not going to get into too much about that. But basically, an inversion just means the order that the notes appear in a chord. So this would be root position. First inversion would be with the third note on the bottom. And then second inversion would be with the fifth on the bottom. So you can create chords, you can put notes together to make chords. Another important concept is the idea of the chord progression. So the most common chord progression uses the one chord of the scale. So if we're in the key of C, the one chord is going to be a C major chord. But then the other two most likely chords you're going to use a lot of songs is the chord based on the fourth note of the scale, which in the key of C would be F, and the fifth note of the scale, which is G. So there's thousands and thousands of songs that use those three chords. So knowing the notes of the scale helps you understand what the 1, 4, 5 chords are. A lot of times if you're just playing with somebody new, or you just go to a jam session or something and someone says, what song is this? What are the chords? Someone might say, oh, it's just a 1, 4, 5 progression in C. So that would mean and of course there'd be different rhythms for that, and that's something I'll talk about in another video. But just the idea of understanding that the chords based on the first, the fourth, and the fifth notes of the scale are the most common chords in popular music and country music and just about any kind of music, blues music. And the other chord that you're likely to see is the chord based on the sixth tone of the scale, which in the key of C would be an A note. Only that chord is usually a minor. And those chords are also known as what's called the relative minor of the key. So in the key of C, A minor is the relative minor. And you hear these chords in thousands of songs. But it's good to understand how they fit together, and also it's good to understand how to transpose, which is a little bit more advanced thinking. But once you understand the number system, the idea that the root note is the starting note, and then you're counting up from there. If you can find the 4 chord and the 5 chord, and also to find the relative minor, you can count down 3 frets from the root note, the major note. So if I'm on a C on the 5th string, 3rd fret, if I go down 3 frets, then I'll be at the 5th string open, which is an A note. And then if I create a minor chord, that's the relative minor. So you can take this same concept and apply it to other chords, and also you can apply it to when you capo. So if you put a capo on the 2nd fret, and you can play the same chord shapes, but it changes the key, and that's what a lot of people do because it helps their voice. So talked about the major scale, talked about the 1, 4, 5 chords, talked about the relative minor. There's a minor scale too. There's several different minor scales and modes, but the basic one would just be the same notes as the major scale starting 3 frets back. So if the notes of the C scale are C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, if I start on a A note on the 5th string open, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That's how you create the minor scale. So, in addition to just major chords, a lot of times when you look up a song, like in Ultimate Guitar or somewhere online, you may see numbers and letters after the chord letter. So you might see like C7. Well, when you see C7, what that's really saying is you're adding what's called the flat 7 note of the scale. It's not the 7th note of the scale, and that's a different chord. But most of the time you're going to see a letter and the number 7. And what that means is you're adding the note 2 frets back from the root note. So 2 frets back from C is B flat. And when notes are lowered, they're called flatted. And when notes are raised, they're sharped. So if you're at a C note on the 3rd string, 5th fret, and you go down, that really would be C flat or B, but it can also be called C flat. And if you're at C and you go up a half step or 1 fret, that would be C sharp. So if you go down 2 frets from C, you're at a B flat. So if you add a B flat note to a C chord, it becomes a C7 chord. But the 7th note of the C scale is a B. So when you add a B note to a C chord, that's a C major 7. So a lot of times it'll say CMA7. So that's the difference between a major 7 and a 7th chord. And you'll hear songs that kind of use both of them, like so that's the 7th concept. Also, sometimes when you see songs online and you see the chords and the lyrics, sometimes you'll see the letters SUS. And what that means is suspended. So a suspended chord is when you replace the 3rd of the chord with the 4th or the 2nd. Sometimes it'll say C sus4. So what that means is you're adding the 4th note of the scale, which would be an F. C, D, E, F. And you're eliminating, well, I'm replacing the E with an F note. You can still use the E up here, or you could play it. You could play it up there. A lot of times these are done on like a D or an A. So like, and here I'm playing a D chord, so the fourth note of the D scale is a G, so I'm adding a G note to the D chord. And then here, I'm adding an E note, which is the second note of the D scale. And that might be referred to as a D sus2. So the suspended notes are just kind of notes that replace the third of the chord with either the fourth or the second. Sometimes you'll see the letter of the chord and the number 5. And what that means is it's just the root and the fifth and no third. So you're just playing either 2 or 3 notes. Sometimes it's just the root and the fifth, or the root, the fifth, and the octave. So. And these are also called power chords, but it's kind of rare that you'll see a chart for a song that'll say G power chord. Usually it'll just say G5 or E5 or D5 or whatever it is. So you can do it with just 2 notes. And I'm playing the 6th string at the 5th fret, the G note, and the 5th string at the 5th fret, which is the D note. You could add the G octave on the 4th string at the 5th fret. And the power chords are named from the low note. So if you wanted to play G, B flat, C, F, just have to know the notes on the low 2 strings. So that's just another common thing you'll see. Sometimes also you'll see add after a chord. It's like you might see C add 9. Instead of sus 9, you're adding the 9th. And usually what that means is you're adding the note above the octave. If it says sus 2, that's also a D, but so this would be so D note would be the second note there if you added it right lower, but if you added a D note, so D is the 9th scale tone. You'll see this chord shape a lot in popular music. And I'm just playing a G, a D on the first 2 strings, the 3rd fret, 3rd string open, 4th string at the 2nd fret, 5th string at the 3rd fret. And this shape can also kind of be transferred over to a G sound too. If you just move your 1st and 2nd fingers over to the 6th and 5th string, and many songs do that. A lot of songs use this pattern, and also kind of keep your first 2 your first 2 strings at the 3rd fret. This would be a C9, C add 9. This would be a G. Sometimes this is called a G5, not because it's a power chord, but because you're playing the 5th scale tone, which is a D, instead of the B on the 2nd string. And for the D, I'm actually doing a D suspended. And for the E, I'm doing what would be called an E minor 7. And that's because it's an E minor chord, but then the 7th note is a D. So, and that's the flat 7. So this is a C add 9, D suspended to an E minor 7. You've probably seen these chord shapes, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of understanding of how they work and how they fit together. One other thing I'd just like to mention is what are called slash chords. Sometimes you'll see a note and then a slash and then another note. So like maybe you'll say C and then a slash and then a B. What that's saying is that you're changing the bass note. And usually that's a descending pattern, or it could be an ascending pattern, but it's usually descending, like. So these are just some examples of descending patterns, and that's what the slash chord is. So these are just some basic concepts of music theory and how they apply to the guitar and how to find notes on the guitar. So, the root and the fifth, root, the fifth, and an octave. So if you know that this is a C and the fifth is a G, and then the octave is going to be another C. So if you can find one note, work from there. So here's a C, here's a D, here's an E, but then it's going to be a half step to an F. And then if you wanted a power chord, you could form that from there. And then this would be the octave. And this would be the fifth of F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that would be a C note. And then you could work back from there. There's an octave. So there's the C, and there's the C. It is important to know the notes, especially in the low strings, because if you're playing power chords and you're in the key of A, and you're reading a chart, it kind of helps to know where the notes are and to be able to form the chords from there. All right, hope this helps.